Hello again, and it's time for another project. Today we're going to do some scroll saw work on these little flower templates we can see here. And the idea is we're going to cut out all the white section, just leaving the outline of the flower itself. And eventually we're going to cut out enough to fill this inner frame completely. Now that measures in at 10 inches by 8 inches. And the actual frame itself is 13 by 15, I believe. Now, this is the first time for me. It's actually going to do what we call stack cutting. And we're going to cut 4 pieces all at the same time. This is 3mm, 3.3 maybe, 3mm plywood. So we've got 12mm in total. And we'll basically stick that on there with our painter's tape, which I'll show you in a minute. Drill our pilot holes and cut these out, and that will give us 16. So obviously 4, 4, 4 and 4. And then we will spread them all about on here. There is enough room, I did notice before, just to get 2 sections of this underneath with the frame itself, thickness wise. So that was one, and there's the other, and that's just a nice finish on there with the 2 pieces. There is glass to go with this, but I'm not going to put the glass in. I just like to be able to feel the scroll saw work, and we are going to inlay it all with resin. So coloured resin on this one, so we're going to go a little bit crazy. Basically filling all the flowers in, putting it back into the frame, and hopefully we'll have a little project at the end of it. So before that, we'll stick these together. For me personally, I'm just going to use painter's tape. I'm not too sure how you stick these. Some people might use glue. I've heard of people just putting little pin nails in to hold them in place at each corner. I'm just going to put the tape round, spray on our glue, bit of adhesive like so, spray that on there, and literally stick our template straight on. And like I say, we will cut out 4 flowers at one time. Now that will give us 16. I don't think that's going to be enough to cover that for sure. So if not, I'll basically cut the same 4 little pieces out again. Basically just drew around that piece of paper, as you can see. Glue some more, stick them down, cut some more, and double up on the flowers if needed. Now for me, blade wise, just put this to one side. I like to use spiral blades. They're not for everybody. The good thing about spiral blades, the teeth, should I say, they run the full length in a spiral, and we can quickly go around that. The other 2 blades, pin blades and pinless, as you can see there. One has pins on the end, one doesn't. You'll get away with this pinned one, more or less. If you drill a big enough pilot hole, we just to say get that in there. So any blade would work, just find what suits you. But for me, little spiral blades. But unfortunately with my old draper that sits here there in the corner, it only takes pin blades, so I have to use these adapter clamps. And there's different types out there. Axminster, this is a draper. If you put in draper, you'll find these ones. There's all different weird and wonderful things. So adapter clamps for me with a Pegas number 5. But before that, we'll glue it all together, get our little pattern ready, drill the holes, and start cutting out some little flowers. Right, so we've stuck the 4 little pieces together with our tape. We sprayed the glue on. We put our template on top. Just a little bit too much glue today, but it's all stuck down nicely, no problem. And we've drilled all our little pilot holes. We've fed the blade through. Remember, with any of your blades, be they spiral or straight blades, they want to feel smooth on the way down and rough on the way up. We've took up the tension at the back. Ping, ping, ping. Basically going to start cutting all the inner sections on all 4 flowers, and then you notice there I've drilled a little pilot hole just to keep it all together, and then we'll pop the blade back into one of those little holes and then just literally start cutting out the flower itself. We'll remove all 16 flowers and then just give them a bit of general sanding down just to tidy things up with, and then we'll see if we've got enough to fill in that little framework. Right, so we've cut out the inner section of the flowers. No problem with those, as you can see. Now the only downside with your spiral blades, you do get a lot of this, what I call noduly stuff, fluffy stuff on the back end. We will get a bit of sandpaper, there's little files, and just give that a nice general tidy up at the end. And we're going to round off the tops of the flower just slightly. Right, we'll pop it back on the saw again and literally just cut out the flower completely. The reason why I've drilled these pilot holes in, you might be tempted to come in from the top there, just start cutting out. And obviously that will just leave it connected by that side there. And as we've only got basically tape at the either end, and a little bit in the middle there, it might move about a bit. So we're just going to drill that. We've drilled our pilot hole. We can cut that one out, take the blade out, pop it into the next one, and so on. And hopefully that will just keep the wood together more, if you know what I mean. Okay, let's pop it back on this saw and cut out the rest. Right, so we've cut around the 4 flowers there, and hopefully when we take the tops off, there's our 16 little flowers all ready to go. So that's stack cutting. Saves a lot of time and effort doing them singly. Now all we need to do now is just generally just tidy them up. The middle ones aren't too bad, but like the end ones here, you can just more or less see all that rough stuff. So a little sanding down. The edges aren't perfect on these, so we can round that off, or we get the Dremel with a little sanding burr on, just shape them all around, peel that bit of tape off. I'm sure there's somewhere that's got tape on. There they are, and we just peel this tape off quite easy. Remember, could we put that painter's tape underneath? That will come off with no issues, like so. So general tidy up, round it up. What I like to do as I go along is get a pencil and literally just mark off which are the back of the pieces. So just a little mark, just go around, doesn't matter. Remember, we're not going to see any of that. And I can just focus on the top section and just round off those edges a little better, like so. Okay, we'll give all these a nice tidy up, and then when we come back, we'll see if we've got enough to cover that 8x10 backer board. Right, we've sanded all the flowers down. Remember, we started off with 16. Now that wasn't enough to finish, or cover should I say, the 8x10 backer board. So I had to make another 16, and that wasn't enough. So I had to make a few more. So in the end, we've ended up with 39 of these, just to cover that little bit of 8x10 inches, and it does cover it. But before we put it all together and get our resin and sort it all out, we have these to stain first, and I am going to stain them. At one time I was going to stick them all to tape and just black spray them, but I'm just going to dip them all into light teak. I've got a little pot here. We're going to pop some in there, and then just give them a dip, put them to one side, and so on. So we'll set that up. Same with the backer. We'll colour that backer the same colour, just so that when we put the resin in, if the colour resin is not dark enough with the acrylic paint, the darker backer will make it at least seem darker than what it is. So we'll set this all up with the light teak. I can just find it here in the drawer. Here we go, light teak wood stain. Basically pour some of that in there and just stain all these 39 pieces up. Right, so we've got our light teak popped a little bit into a container there. That just makes things a little bit easier. Got myself some tweezers. Now you can just drop them all in together if you wanted to. I'm just simply going to do that. Take off the bits and we'll pop that to one side. And we'll do this 39 times. It won't take a matter of minutes. And also the backer itself, remember, you want to colour that the same. Just because it just helps with the resin. Like I say, if you don't mix your colours strong enough, I've had previous projects where the actual resin, because it wasn't dark enough, has come through, should I say, the stainer behind. And if you look really close, you can see it hanging behind the back of the resin, should I say. So to play safe, we will literally get our brush. And there's our backer piece. Remember, this is going to go into our frame. And literally just cover all that exactly the same way. You won't see a lot of this. Remember, this is going to all get coated in with these flowers. Once this project's all done, these will all sit on there like so. And remember, we will pop resin into each one of these. So it will look totally different again. But for now, we'll continue with this. We'll finish that backer off. When these are all nice and dry, we can look into how we're going to attach them to that backer board. And now we're going to hopefully fill them all in with resin without everything running away on us. Right, there's all our bits nicely dry. We've covered both sides of that. So what I want to do next is just spray a little bit of varnish on this. One, because for me personally, I think it just finishes a project off when it's got a little bit of a shine. And sometimes it will help with sealing these side walls and the tops and stuff, especially on the backer. Just allowing for when the resin goes in, hopefully it'll just cut back on a few of the bubbles and stuff. But personally myself, I don't think it need it. You're quite happy just put this together as it is now and not bother. But for me, it just means I'm heading towards the finishing line. So we're going to spray this as well. Remember, we won't see a lot of this. All these flowers are going to eventually get put on here. I'm still debating if they're going to glue them on, resin on, put them on first and pour resin in between and hopefully keep it all together. I'm still in a meeting about that one. But for now, we're just simply going to spray it all. And then when we come back, we can start trying to fit all these pieces onto here the best we can. Ideally, we want to fill as much of that square in as possible. And then remember, once the frame goes around it, hopefully those flowers will be nice and colourful, coloured in with multicoloured resins mixed with acrylic paints. Okay, but for now, just a quick spray of it. I'll do it 2 or 3 times. It's just enough to say that we've given it a go. And we'll darken them down slightly. So I'll set this up outside and see how we go on. And then when we come back, we'll literally just start putting it all together. Right, we've come indoors now. It's a bit, it's a rainy day today. Now, off camera, I basically turned the frame upside down. So we are looking at the back of the frame. And we've placed in our backer board. And it's took me a good half an hour plus to place these flowers in position. They're quite tight and I better twist them and turn and they're popping up. So it got a little bit frustrating. So I'm not going to take them off again. So I'm just going to leave them there. If I just stick one out, you can see we've got that little bit of a shine on there from that varnish. And hopefully everything's sealed in. And I can hopefully put that back in the right place. Yeah, that was... I'm going to leave them like that. I'm not going to touch them. Normally, with these kind of projects, to glue them down, you couldn't use super glue or anything because you've got to seal the complete flower. It's no good putting a couple of dabs on and sticking it down. Once you put your resin, I'll guarantee it will find a way out and leak into the next flower and so on. Some of these underneath have got little chippings out and they're not as snug and they won't be as tight as they should be. So you cannot use glue. So for me personally, I use resin to stick these down. Now ideally, you would put a thin layer on the backer board and then just stick your flowers on press them down, put another thing over the top, put a weight on and press it down and leave it overnight. That means I would have to take these off one at a time and brush the resin on the back, or like I say, cover the full piece. That's just a little bit time consuming, and I'm a bit panicky that I'm not going to get them all in the right area. We have no area to play with here. So for this one, and it's going to be a first for me, I'm just going to mix a little bit of resin up, and I'm just going to use the back of one of these spoons. This is what I use when I'm doing my mixing. Any knife, fork, spoons, these plastic things, they're ideal. And I'm hopefully just going to drop a bit into each petal. Still be a slow process, and as that spreads about, ideally it will seal these flowers to the backer. We only have one way to find out. Now before I place the board into the frame itself, you probably won't see it there, we've got a little barrier of sellotape all the way around, just standard sellotape. And what I've done on a little sample here was, if you can see it, we put a piece of tape along the back and down, and you've turned it over, fold it up and just nip that corner like so, and that has made just enough little barrier all the way around, exactly the same as what we've got in there, and that will stop our resin running over the side and sticking this backer to the framework. Remember, when this is all nicely completed, we'll pop this out, turn the frame over and then pop it back in from the back, and hopefully we will have some sort of nice flowered project. So we've got our little plastic barrier all the way around, so hopefully we'll have no leakages. All our flowers are in position, so we're going to mix some resin up. As always for now on my projects, it's a Vista-one resin. It's a 2-part resin. Just watch your resin. Some resins are deep pour, some are craft resins. With this one you mix it 1 to 1, so whatever amount of A, your resin, you need the exactly same amount of B, your adner or catalyst I think it's called. And you mix by volume. Some resins you mix by weight, so be careful of that. I use these little party cups. These are fantastic. Just cheap party cups here, and they're little grooves up the side. So I'm going to count up 3 today of A and 3 today of B. Pop it in, mix them together. They do say transfer A and B into a third container. Something I've never done. I put B into A because it's a runny to the two. Give it a nice mix round with those party spoons, knife and forks, and literally just dab, dab, dab. There's syringes out there. If your hand's not too steady, excuse me, it is possible to use a syringe. I've tried it once, it's not for me. And also these plastic pipettes, they will work if you cut the end off a bit, suck up your resin, and it's just possible to squirt, squirt, squirt like so. That didn't work for me either. So I'll just mix my resin off camera, remember, and then we'll start filling this in slightly. We've only got 3mm to play with, so we can't put a lot in. Ideally we just want to seal it all. The other option would be to take one out. I'm even concerned about moving these. And you could brush the resin on there if you wanted to, and then try and stick it back in there like so. It's just too tight to play about with, so let's just dab a bit into these petals. Okay, mix a bit of resin, come back and we'll fill this one in. Right, so we've mixed a little bit of resin up there. Now I don't know if this is going to work or not. The one thing we don't want to do is put too much resin in, because those flowers could quite happily just float up, no problem. So it's a trial and error thing. In a perfect world, we could have stuck these down with a dab of glue maybe, and then filled them this way. But like I said previously, for me personally, I would have brushed resin on the full back piece, and then put these flowers in one at a time and stuck them down. But I've had such a palaver getting them all in place. So it's going to be a simple case of just putting a little dab into each petal, and hopefully it will spread enough to seal them all in position. Now it's going to be a slow process, so we can just start off wherever we want, and literally just a little drop. It says hopefully drop, drop. And I'll just go around and do this to every flower. And hopefully you can see there, it will spread itself about. Get your little cocktail stick and help it along. This isn't the best way to do it, but it's going to have to do for today, should I say. Right, I'll continue and fill in the rest of these flowers. Right, we've got all that resin in there, nothing's moved, it's gone okay for now. Remember, we can't put too much resin in, because once that resin's cured, apparently when you add the new resin on top, it won't stick to it. But we've got enough on these 3mm thicknesses here for the resin to attach to that. So I've certainly got no issues about the resin not sticking into those flowers. And you can more or less just see from there, we've got nice reflection. So we've gone all the way around the inside and the outside of the flowers. Because any of those gaps, we will be putting some kind of green or some random colour just to fill in all those spaces. So the full piece itself will be full eventually. And I've looked underneath and that sellotape's done its job and nothing's leaked out. So that definitely wasn't the easiest way to do it, but it's filled a bit of time in doing it this way, that is for sure. Right, we'll pop a little cover on this. We can use that original piece of board. We'll simply place that on there like so, and then get a nice weight on it and press it down. And we'll come back tomorrow, basically do the same procedure with our resin again, but we're going to put plenty of colour in, and ideally we'll start filling all these in. We'll come back tomorrow. Right, it's the next day. Now, if you wanted to, you could probably fill this in maybe 4 to 5 hours later, whilst the resin is still tacky. That way, when we put our resin on top, it'll have something to bond to. But personally myself, I think there's enough to play with the depth of these flowers to not be overly concerned about that. And obviously, remember, once it's all nicely filled in, we've got all our lovely colours here, we will simply pop the framework round and that will sit on there like so. But for now, we'll put it back into its little mould. It looks like that sellotape's done its job. You can see there, that's soaked in the side. So hopefully we shouldn't have any more leakages now. So we'll just pop that back in there. And basically just going to start filling this in. Remember, there's 39 flowers, so I've got as many colours as we can find. Some we will mix together. We want them nice and bright. And basically just start filling these in. And then I think we're going to get a nice lime green of some description, and maybe just fill in all the back as one colour. Originally I was going to do these as separate colours as well, but it might just go a little bit too crazy. So we'll mix our resin exactly the same, remember, A, your resin quickly, and B, same amount, 1-to-1 mix. So whatever we have of A, we want the same with B. This will mix the two together, and then we'll add in our first colours, one of our little acrylics here, mix it round, start filling a few in. Once we've done our first set of resin, I will literally just transfer a little bit into a separate beaker, mix our colour, and then whatever's left we'll transfer it into another beaker, little cup, and so on and so on. And hopefully it should all fill in without any leaking, he says, hopefully. Okay, well, I'll mix the first batch up, and basically we're going to start filling this one in. Okay, there's our first batch of resin mixed up. There's a good inch worth in there, and it'll be surprising how far this will go to fill this in. Obviously we only need a little bit because we're going to do one colour at a time. So it's just a simple case of transferring a little bit into there. Pure guesswork. I normally have little side projects, little moulds going and stuff like that, so we have no wastage. So that little bit will do for now. Remember, for me personally, I like these plastic knife and forks because they've got that little scoop in, and that will be enough just to transfer into our flower. Now the first colour, nice bright yellow. They do say 10% of whatever, oh excuse me, we caught it, 10% of whatever you mix per the amount of resin. Personally myself, I'll just put in what I think I need. As long as there's some in here, here we go. Probably a little bit too much in there. Will it mix in? Of course it will. I do like nice solid colours. If this was more stained glass effect and we literally stuck it all down to plastic, clear plastic or film of some description, you probably wouldn't want this as thick, because obviously you would want the light to shine through. So I'm just going to go with this straight away. Remember, we've darkened the background with that light teak, so that will add in our favour, making this yellow look darker than what it is. So we'll start filling it up, we'll speed things up, then we'll come back as we go along. Simple lighter, preferably one that works, and we just skim over the top once the resin's gone in, and that just helps any little bubbles come to the top. There shouldn't be too many, to be honest. Remember, we've more or less sealed the bottom of this with the resin already, and hopefully it will all stick together. Okay, let's pick a flower and start filling this one up. It will find its level slowly. Remember your little cocktail stick, and we'll use that to help it on its way. Now I'm going to try and fill these up as much as I can. When your resin cures, you will get a concave effect. So on the previous project, I was a little bit too tight with the resin. So we're going to try and get in as much as we can to actually fill this up, like so. Okay, I'm going to get the general idea from that. We'll probably get maybe 2 yellows on this one, because obviously we've got a bit of resin to play with. So let's pick another flower. Let's go for a really small yellow one down here. And we're going to need a little bit more in those, so we'll top those up as we go along. As long as we don't mess about too much, we should have enough time to sort these out. Now originally I was going to put black centres in. I think I've just decided there I'm actually going to do the middle the same. Like so. And then we could dab in here as well. Okay, we got the general idea from that. Let's start filling this one in. Right, we finally got that all covered in with our coloured resin there, and as we've gone along, we've got our lighter and just skimmed across each flower like so, and that just helps remove any little air bubbles. So that's it. We'll just put that to one side now. 24 hours, let this all nicely cure. We'll find a cover. Always cover your projects. Any dust, flies, they will find it, I'm sure. So we'll cover this up and then come back 24 hours. Right, we're heading towards the finishing line. So it's 24 hours later, if not a bit less. Personally, I would leave this for another couple more days, just make sure everything's nice and solid. They do say on certain resin groups and manufacturers that it takes up to 30 days to fully cure. I think that's a little bit over the top, but I'm not a resin manufacturer. Please don't follow me by example. And just remember, when you are working with resin, you want proper gloves on, proper resin mask, and plenty of ventilation. Some people can get quite a reaction to this resin. It is a chemical after all, so please research and look into your health and safety kind of things. So, like I say, it's all done now, so we can literally just pop it out the frame. Remember, this is the back of the frame. I'm going to turn it over in a minute. And I've pulled 2 sections of the sellotape off. I've just left a couple on just to show you how easy that comes off. So it's just a simple case, taking your end, and that just pulls off like so. And that's definitely worked as a dam. You can more or less just see the side sections there. Stopped any flown away on us. Now it might just be a little bit tighter in the frame now, but that's no problem. We simply get a Dremel sanding drum and just sand these sides down, allowing for that bit of resin that's gone over. And you can see from that, hopefully, everything's nice and solid. We've had no issues, we've had no leakages, so we got away with that idea of putting the resin on afterwards. A bit slower in the process, but it certainly did the job. So it will be a simple case of popping this back in here. Hopefully it fits. We might have to turn it round. See, it's a little bit tight off that way, so we literally just spin it round, and it says hopefully it'll fit in. He says hopefully. Just let's put that one in first. Here we go, we're getting there. Right, that's all nicely in now. Right, that was a little bit tight. Ideally we could have sanded a little bit off there, but it's tight enough that we don't need anything on the back to hold it. You can put some tape around there. There's some original clips that holds it all in place, but for me, I think that's plenty tight enough. And we'll just turn it over, and there's our finished project. I will find a hanger to put on the back. I like it long ways down like that, if you can see from there. That's a nice little piece. Remember, it's a recycled frame. It's an old frame I had lying around, so we've repurposed that, as I say. We've got our nice little project in the middle. I do have the glass for this, but personally myself, because that is flush on the back, that's nice little finish of that, and obviously it's proper nice and solid now. I don't want the glass over. I prefer that you can touch it and feel that it's been cut out on the scroll saw and inlaid with resin. So that's it. This little project is finished. So the actual piece in the middle was 8 inches by 10 inches. The frame itself is 15 inches by 13 inches. If you remember, we cut out those 39 flowers. I used a Pegas spiral blade. That's just a personal choice. A standard straight blade or even a pin one at a push would have cut these out just as easy. And remember, we did stack cutting. That allows us to cut 4 flowers out at the same time. Once they're all nicely cut out, we stained the flowers themselves, the outer line area and the backer, with a nice light teak wood dye, and then we sprayed on a bit of varnish. 1 to seal it all, 2 to give it a little bit of a shine. It's not a lot, and I actually went over the frame at the same time, and you might just see that gloss on there. And to me, it just finishes off the project. And then we use our Vista-one resin. I've used 3 or 4 different resins in the past, and they all have the same result, so it doesn't have to be that one, obviously. And for colour wise, there is dyes, powders, inks. I just use acrylic paint, Crawford and blacks on this one, and I've certainly had no issues, and everything's set nice and solid, as you can see from that. And remember, I said about the bits left over, I don't waste anything on my little projects. So what I intend to do is use a little silicone mould, very small one. You can see here, like little ice cube moulds. I've got ones of fish which I've done and filled in the past. And that was all that's left over from our project. So pure guesswork, and from that we haven't done too bad. And these just simply pop out, leaving a little cube like that. And I just basically have been saving these as I've gone along, and I've ended up with quite a few in there, as you can see. And I will use these should I say, in a project, hopefully in the future. But for now, that's it. So we've cut out flowers on the scroll saw, inlaid with resin, and put inside a nice recycled frame. We'll take this outside now, and hopefully you might get a better look of the lighting, but this little project is finished. Thank you very much for watching.